In the late 1800s in Chicago, tension between workers and employers had reached a fever pitch.
It was a significant time in the city of Chicago when the moneyed interests were pushing down on the working people.
Workers and their unions called for a general strike that by May 1st of 1886, all workers should be on strike in this country for the 8-hour day. But Chicago was really the epicenter of the labor movement at that time, and up to 80,000 workers in Chicago were on strike.
At the time, the whole city was in turmoil, I think. But over at the McCormick Reaper plant, they had cut the wages of the workers.
A meeting to protest treatment of the workers was held on the night of May 4th in Haymarket Square. It began as a peaceful protest, but as police moved in to break up the meeting, a sudden explosion rocked the crowd. Several people died in the ensuing chaos, and scores were injured.
They took leaders of the movement for the fight of the 8-hour workday. They tried them, sentenced them, hung them, without any real evidence.
Many people believe that the Haymarket tragedy was the single most important event that influenced labor in the United States, if not the entire world.
After Haymarket, we get into the 1890s. We're talking about George Pullman, the American Railway Union.
The Pullman workers called for a strike, ultimately getting the American Railway Workers Union, led by Eugene Debs, to support the strike that ended up being a national strike across the country and shut down the railroad system.
It was very simple. We needed power. It was power that you couldn't achieve by having only one union.
Now, Chicago had other local labor councils, but none of them collected all the power in one place.
So we needed the creation of the Chicago Federation of Labor to bring all those voices together. We've been here since 1896.
But what the labor movement is able to do when they come together through a collective body like the CFL is they're able to harness the entire breadth and strength and collective action of the entire labor movement when the time comes and when it's needed.
At the call of American Federation of Labor President Samuel Gompers, the Chicago Federation of Labor was created on November 9, 1896. One of the first presidents of the newly formed CFL was John Fitzpatrick.
John Fitzpatrick was a horseshoer from Ireland who, when he came to the United States, became this incredible trade union activist. He started with the CFL as an organizer and became not only our president, but our leader.
And it's his reform model that helped make the Chicago Federation of Labor a very powerful and very progressive labor organization in the entire country.
He fought for justice for workers regardless of race, at a time when that wasn't easy.
For example, in 1919, race riots engulfed the nation and Chicago in what was to be known as the Red Summer. The CFL, under Fitzpatrick's leadership, urged workers to stand united, regardless of race.
The August 2nd, 1919 edition of the Federation News had a statement in it that was very explicit that said that union workers in the city should be protecting black citizens of the city of Chicago.
John Fitzpatrick supported the organizing of the meatpackers at the Union stockyards, and he understood that the unions that were dominated by whites needed to have blacks integrated into the unions, and he supported that.
John Fitzpatrick and CFL Secretary Edward Nockels, a member of IBEW Local 134, were innovators, from their organizing tactics to their embrace of new technologies.
John Fitzpatrick and Ed Nockels founded their own radio station, WCFL, back in the early days of radio.
The voice of labor at the WCFL gave everybody an opportunity to discuss the labor issue of the day.
So they were very cutting edge for their time.
After Fitzpatrick's death in 1946, William A. Lee, a Teamster bakery driver, would become the president of the CFL, using his practical idealism to guide the organization through a changing world for nearly 40 years.
In the 1950s and 1960s, you saw an ever-increasing fight for racial justice and equity. That fight also occurred here in Chicago. The CFL and its affiliates supported Dr. King when he came here in 1966.
The CFL, they pushed hard. They pushed really hard in parades and marches and pushing legislators on the Voting Rights Act, this type of stuff.
An outgrowth of the civil rights movement was the emergence of new black leaders like Congressman Harold Washington. In 1983, despite incredible odds, Chicago elected Harold as its first black mayor.
When Harold Washington first ran for mayor, the CFL supported him in his first election, and he also supported him in his re-election.
Organized labor always gets what it wants. If it wants Harold, you've got Harold.
We felt he had a great union record as a congressman.
My union, the Coalition of Black Trade Unions, worked to get Harold elected. I knocked on doors. I even babysat in the projects for people to be able to go out and vote. When Harold became mayor, we got collective bargaining in the state of Illinois. We were able to organize employees in the city of Chicago, which was an exciting experience.
In the 1990s, the CFL continued the fight for justice by hosting a rally with Cesar Chavez in 1990 and a visit by South African freedom fighter Nelson Mandela in 1993.
Oh, it was so exciting to have Nelson here. The Illinois Labor Network Against Apartheid. We boycotted Shell. We fought fights like free Moses Mayakisu, who was an activist from South Africa. We were rallying at the South African consulate and were arrested. So that organization basically was the push to get Nelson here in Chicago.
Today, the CFL continues to build on that spirit of solidarity that has guided the organization since 1896, supporting its affiliates and all workers in the fight for a better world. In recent years, the CFL has led the charge to raise the minimum wage, protect retirement security, pass fair work week and paid sick leave ordinances, and lift up collective action and collective voice in Chicago, Cook County, and beyond.
For 125 years, the CFL has been fighting for social justice, racial equity, and for workers.
And it is that ability to harness those different industries that gives the CFL its uniqueness. It's really the only organization that can do that. And when it's done right, and when folks come together, when the leaders of these organizations find common interest, something magical happens.
If we don't keep organizing, we won't have anybody to fight for us, right? We've got to organize, we've got to grow.
The one thing that's common is that we continue to fight and we continue to look for new and interesting ways to do it.